Hey, YouTubey. I want to keep my word on what I said. I said that I would do another video and talk about death with dignity law. It's a very controversial subject. I call it a taboo subject because people want to treat it that way. And it's usually from the stigma that's put on it, like mental illness. People don't understand things, so they don't want to talk about it. Like unaliving yourself. And it's because of the stigma. Did you know that the highest rate of taking your life, the people that do it are actually psychiatrists? And I believe that the reason for this is because psychiatrists, uh, they actually suffer with post-traumatic stress disorder. And I can understand why. Psychiatrists and therapists, they spend so much time listening to other people's trauma. And the ones that are born to be in these positions, they're going to have true empathy. They pick up not only what the person is saying, but they can physically feel the emotions of the person, their pain and their sorrow. But psychiatrists and therapists, uh, they have a hard time finding somebody else to talk to. And with the way that everything is set up now, you have to be really, really careful about what you say, especially if you're working in the medical. Or even, I would think by now, even if you're Leo, because you're judged so harshly. And it's a real thing. People unalive themselves every day for some reason or another. And certain mental illnesses affects your brain when it comes to your serotonin and dopamine and other chemistry. And when you get to that point, you're not thinking normally anyway. You will become very, very depressed. And it just happens. But that's another subject. What I want to talk about right now is death with dignity. And what death with dignity is when you have assisted unaliving. But it's only to a point. And it depends on what state. I did a little bit more research because back when I was looking at it, there was only 2 states I was aware of, but I knew there were more. I just didn't look that deep. And Oregon is one, and so is Washington State. Now, some of the other states is a little different, but the 2 states that I know about is you have to administer the medication yourself. Give it to yourself. Nobody else can give it to you. And in some of the other states, you can have a doctor administer it to you. And you say, well, that's the same as unaliving yourself. Yes, it is. It is. But it's death with dignity. And it applies to people that have a terminal illness. And in some states, I've seen people that have actually went to court and to fight the terminal part with a different illness. And one of the people I saw was suffering a type of depression that it just would not respond to any type of medical treatment. And people are judged so much on a mental illness such as depression. But that's because they don't understand different types of depression. And I'm not going to make this very long. I made my last video that I meant to ever make on this channel, but I did make a promise I would come back and talk about this, and I was reminded of it, so I'm going to. First, let me tell you something about me. I was a charge nurse the whole time that I was in nursing. I've seen a lot of things, and I was also a first responder in search and rescue. I have seen just about everything you can see. And due to my indoctrination of religion, back in the day, I was totally against this, probably for the same reason many of you are. I viewed it as straight out suicide, and we had no right to determine our death time. God gave us our life at a certain time, and only He should have the power to take it no matter what. And it was just that way. There was no getting through to me any other way. I was a nurse to save life, not take it. Although I never thought it was right to put an NG tube, a nasal tube, down somebody's nose and force feed them when I knew that they were at the end stages of life, because I know how the body starts shutting down, and the first thing you're going to do is lose your appetite. And to force feed somebody and prevent them from dying naturally, I didn't hee-haw too well with, but of course I followed doctor's orders, and I have, may as well say, force-fed on time through that tube, whether it be a gastric tube or a nasal tube, and I put down many nasal tubes. And I do think it should be done, though, if a person, is just sick and has a good chance of getting better and, starting to eat again and all that stuff. And I understand, too, that nasal tubes and gastric tubes need to be done on people that have a trach and can live a good quality of life. But let's get to death with dignity. Death with dignity, most of the laws are you have to be terminal and have only like 6 months left to live. But you decide for yourself that you don't want those 6 months and you want to go ahead and leave on your terms. And maybe you want your family around on a particular day. You still are in your right mind. And you just don't view death the way most people do. You don't want to go through the stages of possibly becoming comatose and not even aware that your family are around, or going through the slow death process, and maybe you just got your own reasons. Or maybe you're in pain the entire time. Well, I don't know if you know who Dr. Kevorkian is. They nicknamed him Dr. Death because he illegally assisted the helping people who were very, very sick to go ahead and have a peaceful death. And he eventually served time in prison. And you can go look him up, Dr. Kevorkian. I may come back later when I have time, and I'll put you some links to him, or you could just look him up. Even if you spell his name wrong, it's going to come up. But anyway, what changed my mind is this. In 97, my mother, who was 52 years old at the time, discovered that her cancer had come back. And the doctors couldn't find it. She had colon cancer, she had surgery, and it was in remission. And if she got by with 5 years of that remission, we pretty much knew she was going to be okay. And she was doing really, really good. And then in 97, she began to have pain. And it kept getting worse, but every time she was checked, they couldn't find it. They got on to me, telling me that because I was a nurse and I was her daughter, that I was just hypervigilant about it. And that, it was just probably in her head. Well, I knew it was not in my head. My mother was strong. She had a high pain threshold. She was a very, very healthy person. She was a health nut. She was active. She loved to hike. And she'd never been sick. other than that cancer thing. And we knew that cancer ran in the family. And she was doing so good after it. But then all of a sudden, and they did MRI after MRI after MRI and still was not finding what was going on. And then she got in so much pain, and nothing they was giving her was doing any good, and they wouldn't give her too much of nothing because they couldn't find a diagnosis. Even though her legs were swelling, her ankles were swelling, she was tossing and turning, and she would be crying every time I took her to the doctor and to any emergency room. And she asked me, "Find that doctor. Please get him for me." And due to my indoctrination, I said, "No, Mama, that's not the right thing to do." My mother had already had a near-death experience. She bled to death when she had my second brother. And she remembered that death experience. And she kept saying, "Just please do this for me. You know I'm not able to do it myself. Let me make my own decisions." And I didn't. And at the time, the doctor was already in trouble, going to be facing court. And I stayed scared all the time because I was afraid my mother was going to take her life and be by herself. I kept an eye on her. I took off work and I stayed with her the whole time. And one day I left, and my husband at the time was there with her. And I forgot where I was at. I think I went to the mall for something. And he called me. He said, "You got to come home. There's something bad wrong." He said, "Your mom is swollen worse than I've ever seen her, and she just can't be still." So I rushed home. And as soon as I got there, I realized that she was probably in renal failure. And I rushed her to another emergency room. And I barreled up in there with her, and I didn't even care that I was a nurse, that I could be rolled up, lose my license, whatever. I pushed her into that emergency room myself. I didn't go past the nurse for no triage or nothing. And I screamed out. I said, "I want the main doctor in here. I want him in here now." And they said, "We're going to call security." I said, "Well, you better get him in here right now. I don't care. You get my mama in here." And the doctor heard me. And he come in there, and I said, "I'm going to tell you right now." I gave him my status, who I was, what I was, everything. I said, "You can write me up. You can call the board. I don't care what you do." I said, "But I want you to get my mother in there, and I want an MRI on her." And I'd already told other doctors that I felt that they should increase the density of the MRI and also do contrast. He was a younger doctor, and when he looked at her, he knew something was bad wrong, and he calmed me down. He said, okay, I'm going to do exactly what you want me to do." And they knocked my mother out with a shot. And they knew they'd have to because she wasn't going to be able to be still in that MRI anyway. Well, they took her back, and I was just pacing and a pacing and a pacing. And then they drew off, I forgot how many liters of urine. You're not supposed to do but so many, I think 1 liter. But they had to. And when he come back out, he took me into a private room by myself, and he told me, he said, "I'm so sorry that they didn't listen to you before." He said, "But yes, I increased it, and I did do contrast. And your mother has a tumor, and it's hiding behind her spine, and that's probably why it wasn't picking up." He told me how big it was. And he said, "I definitely do believe it's cancer, and I'm going to send her right away." And he told me which hospital. I knew it would be a good one. This was on the 2nd of April. I got her there, and I had a really, really good friend that was a doctor, but he was a hematologist, and he met me there. We called in her cancer doctor, but he didn't work at that hospital, so he started contacting doctors he knew. We got there, they immediately put her on a drip of, it's so hard for me to talk about this, I'm already forgetting shit. Immediately put her on a drip of morphine, and something else. And it was keeping her out pretty good. She would wake up and she'd talk to me a little bit and ask me, did they find it? Did they find what's wrong? And I would just tell her, yeah, Mama, we're going to take care of it, and you go back to sleep. And she'd go back to sleep. It was the first rest she had had. And the doctor finally come in and told her, we found it, and your cancer's back, and we need to start your chemo and radiation right now. And she said, okay. So they did. I stayed right there with her, but I'd have to go home and get a shower. And when I came back one day, her clavicle IV was dirty as it could be, and I went off. She had just started the radiation, and I came in, and the doctor was waiting on me outside her room. He knew when I was coming. And he told me, he said, I'm so sorry. And I said, did my mom pass? He said, no. He said, but it's in her bloodstream. I said, it's because of that clavicle, ain't it? He said, yeah. Because if an IV like that gets messed up and bacteria enters into the bloodstream, it's over. And that's exactly what happened. It was not the radiation. It wasn't the chemo. It was because that clavicle IV had gotten nasty and was not cleaned properly, and it hit her bloodstream. And she was actually comatose. So I said, let me take care of this. I'm disconnecting her from everything. But you keep that IV going. I want it turned up. In other words, we're going to snow. Snowing means you don't let them feel pain anymore. You continue the medication. And that's what I did. I crawled up in the bed with my mother, and I was hitting that button every time that thing would let me hit that button. But she did wake up one time, and she asked me, she knew something had happened. She said, what happened to me? And I said, nothing, Mama. You're okay. I said, you just got a little bit sick from your radiation. She said, oh. And she wanted to go right back out, and knew she was going into that coma state. And I kept saying, I love you, Mama. I love you, Mama. I wanted her to say it to me just one more time. And she gritted her teeth at me. That's what she'd do. She got aggravated. I love you too, you little shit. And then I laughed. I said, I know you do. And I said, go to sleep, Mama. And she did. And I changed my mind right then. I realized under conviction, I have no right to tell anybody how, when, where, nothing about their life. It's between them and their Creator. And my mother had her own experience in death with the Lord before. And my beliefs, my thoughts, had no right to judge upon her or anybody else. And Dr. Kevorkian, the one that I used to talk against, became a hero to me right then. And I thought to myself, you know, if I could get to that doctor, help him get out of trouble, I would beg him, let me be your assistant. Well, he ended up in 98, same year that my mother died, and she died 1 month later. She went in on April 2nd, and she died. No, let me take that back. She went in on my birthday. That's why I was gone. I did go to the mall. She went in on my birthday, May 2nd, and she died June 2nd. But because of Dr. Kevorkian, now we do have states that have death with dignity. The same thing he went to prison for, we now have it legal in some states. What I do not agree with is that you have to live in that state in order to qualify for it, and many of them you have to be terminal with only 6 months to live. I think some of that needs to be changed, and I do support it. I say, don't let your own indoctrination, your own brainwashed mind, your own stubbornness make you judge another person. Pain that cannot be treated, things you don't understand, should not ever be judged by another person. Learn what the laws are. Check them out. We have mercy upon our pets. We have no problem euthanizing them and putting them out of their misery. There's no reason we should take that right away from someone we love, or even a human being, period. And we should have that right for ourselves. Can you imagine being in labor and you're not even pregnant and nobody can take that pain away? Or passing a kidney stone and nobody can take that pain away? It's steady. It's daily. It's 24/7. Or any kind of pain. I always said, nobody should be in pain. Not when we have medication to take it away. But what if medication don't take it away? So with that said, I'm just asking you for a 153 consideration. Consider all things. And with that, I'm going to end it. And if you haven't seen my other video where I'm saying farewell, this book is closed, please watch it, because I do appreciate all of you, and I love you. I'm always going to be one of Theost, one of those hosting enlightenment of spiritual thought, not judgment, not religious, spiritual, with the consideration of 153. On here, it's got a thing where it say ask, and it'll kind of summarize this video for you if you don't want to listen to it, with other questions. So, until next time, if there is a next time, it's Sippy. Take care, everybody. I may be posting some stuff on my wall from time to time, but the video time is over. And if you watch the other one, the last one before this one, which I didn't know I was going to be doing this one, but I did get email, hey, you never did talk about that. Well, I'm sorry, I forgot about it. But here it is. Take care, everybody. Love one another. Try not to be judgmental. All right, y'all. Later, Gators.